So thank you and hello, welcome to this webinar on critical thinking skills. My name is Julia Zhe and I will be your presenter for this evening. So before we begin, just to give a little bit of background about me, I am currently a selective school teacher and I teach Japanese language, and I'm also currently the head teacher of administration and languages. I've been involved with the HSC as an examiner, a marker and a writer. And I have also tutored in the past for all school years and adults across a variety of different subjects. Going many more years back to when I was a student, I was able to go to both OC and selective school myself. So I have a very strong connection with this type of schooling in New South Wales. Since I went to those schools and now teach at a selective school, I am experienced in teaching high potential and gifted students, formerly known as gifted and talented students. And therefore, I am always searching for new methods to cater for high achieving students. And that is why I am also interested in higher order thinking skills and critical thinking. So I will talk a bit more about higher order thinking skills very shortly. So this webinar will have 3 sections. The first section will be an information session on what critical thinking is and why it is important. The second section will demonstrate some simple examples of critical thinking, and I will be asking you and your children to participate. So for this section, if you can have a second device ready with internet, such as a phone, that would allow you to participate easily. And the third section will be a brief question and answer session where I will try to answer some of your questions. So let's begin with section 1. Let's talk about critical thinking. I have broken this section down into smaller components using some key questions. So the first question is, what is critical thinking? In this section, I will discuss what the definition of critical thinking is and whether critical thinking is the same as higher order thinking. Before I tell you the meaning of critical thinking though, I would like all of you to think about what you think critical thinking is. Just think of one word or a short phrase, and I'll give you 10 seconds. Okay, so probably when you thought about critical thinking, you thought about some of these words: logic, analysis, facts, decision, judgment, rational, critique. I can tell you now that critical thinking is a very, very broad term, and it is not so easily defined. I will now show you some definitions of critical thinking, and for each definition, I would like you to think about the key elements in that definition. So here is the first one. Critical thinking is logical and independent thinking. It's about improving thinking by analyzing, assessing, and reconstructing how we think. So here I have underlined the words logical and how we think, because those are very, very key elements for critical thinking. They are skills which require thinking about thinking, and also thinking about them in a logical, structured way. Here is another definition. Critical thinking is the systematic asking and answering of questions. Instead of immediately accepting what is read or heard, critical thinkers look for evidence first. So here I have underlined the word questions, which is a key element of critical thinking, and also highlighted the word evidence, which means students are required to look for reasons for their answers. Critical thinking is a higher order thinking skill that requires deeper, more complex thinking. It involves reasoning, comparing, evaluating, inferring, reflecting, and more. So this means that critical thinking is a higher order thinking skill, but it also includes multiple types of thinking, such as reasoning, comparing, etc., etc. So there's a lot of skills that your children need to learn for the future. One more quote. The word critical comes from the Greek word krisis, which means to separate. Therefore, critical thinking is the ability to separate oneself from the problem and view it rationally to find a solution. I find this definition very interesting because it is not easy for a young person to think rationally and to separate themselves from a situation. However, it is a skill that can be taught through exposure and practice if the foundations are there. So as you can see, there are many meanings of critical thinking, and it's very important for you to understand that developing critical thinking skills will be determined by a person's age and context. For me personally, I believe there are three core elements of critical thinking. The first is analytical, the second is creative, and the third is evaluative. Analytical skill is the ability to break down information into smaller categories in order to draw conclusions. It requires logical reasoning and can result with solving problems or making decisions. Creativity is the ability to think about a problem or a question in new or different ways. It can be driven by imagination and also by looking at things from a unique angle. Having this skill will also allow you to solve problems, but perhaps in more interesting ways. And then evaluative skills is the ability to assess the quality of something through examining evidence, reasoning, and making judgments. It's often linked to a set of standards and is a required skill for arguments and reflections. These three skills are often called higher order thinking skills. So now I'm going to show you another triangle to help you understand higher order thinking skills. So higher order thinking is based off something called Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy has been around since the 1950s, and many teachers and educators still use this today when they are creating their teaching programs. So how you read this graph is at the bottom, you will see remember. It means that when someone is learning something for the first time, the first stage is to remember that information. Once they remember that information, then they can try to understand it, so they're building on top of their memorization. Then after that, they can then start to apply it. So applying is more difficult than understanding. Analyzing is more difficult than applying. Evaluating is more difficult than analyzing. And at the very, very top, you have creating. So this is where you produce new or original work. So as you can see, there are a lot of thinking skills required here. All of this on the right-hand side are different types of thinking skills. Remember, understand, and apply are considered to be lower order thinking skills. And then create, evaluate, and analyze are considered higher order thinking skills. Many students who prepare for selective school tests, I find personally that they are very, very good at memorizing, and they can understand some of the information well so that they can apply it in the exam. But as soon as they're asked to analyze something or put their own opinion into something, and at the very top, when they're asked to create something completely new, I find that my students at my school, they struggle. They don't like those kinds of activities because it's not easy anymore. Remembering is quite easy for selective school students in Year 7 and 8. But after Year 7 and 8, they will need to use analysis, evaluation, and creativity. And then that's where they start to struggle a little bit. And that's what we're trying to change, I guess, when we are changing the new selective school test. So all of these skills are going to be necessary for your student, for your child when they are going through school. But notice that the top three, create, evaluate, and analyze, they are exactly the same as the three core elements of critical thinking. So critical thinking is necessary for your child to reach the top of Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, that is probably the reason why some of you will hear critical thinking and some of you will hear higher order thinking skills from different tutoring centers or from different teachers or different things that you see online. They do go hand in hand quite closely, but critical thinking is a type of higher order thinking. So higher order thinking is the overarching term, the big idea, and then you need to develop your critical thinking in order to obtain higher order thinking skills. So hopefully that explains the difference a little bit to you, and also so that you can explain it to your children if they ever ask you. So next we will discuss why critical thinking is important. Is it useful for your child, and will it be necessary for their future? The answer is yes. Critical thinking is considered a 21st century skill by educators and employers. It has been incorporated into all the new syllabus documents, so your child should have already been exposed to some kind of critical thinking activities at school if they've already started school. There are many other 21st century skills. They are the 4 C's. So critical thinking is one of them. Then there's collaboration, communication, and creativity. Okay, so they're known as the 4 C's. And in my opinion, critical thinking and creativity are the most difficult ones to train if they are getting older. Okay, so it's very important to start developing these skills from a younger age. The next reason why critical thinking is important is that employers are increasingly looking for people who have critical thinking skills. They want workers who can innovate and solve problems, not workers who can only copy what has already been done. So together with technology skills, critical thinking is becoming very necessary for the workforce. And finally, critical thinking will allow your child to become independent learners and thinkers. They will be able to filter information on their own and to judge information that they hear from the media, for example, instead of believing everything that other people say. Due to advanced technology now, there's a lot of fake news out there. If your children are browsing the internet and they are looking for information, they might come across too much information and they don't know how to decide which one is valid or which one is good information and which information is not so reliable. So if they are critical thinkers, then they will have the skill to be able to choose wisely the kind of information that they keep. Now, specifically in the school setting, let's take a closer look at the HSC. I know it's a bit far for a lot of you. I think most of you are primary school parents, but let's look at the end goal. So the HSC exams are becoming more and more about higher order thinking skills. So here are some questions from this year's papers, the 2020 exams. This is from the English examination paper. You can see that the first word is analyze. Already it's a higher order thinking skill and it is worth 6 marks of their exam. Here is another English one. How effectively does your prescribed text tell stories to reveal both the personal and shared nature of human experiences? Now, really all we're looking at are the question words. So how effectively means that they have to analyze and also evaluate. Okay, they have to evaluate whether it's effective or not effective and then give reasons for why they think their answer is correct. Here is an example from modern history. So here it's a 25-mark question, meaning that it's an essay. So you can see both questions start with the word evaluate. Okay, so higher order thinking skills are worth more in the exams. And it's not just the writing kind of subjects. There's also mathematical subjects that are moving towards higher order thinking skills. Now, I'm not going to read this whole question, but you can see here in the question, it says, find the smallest possible perimeter of the garden bed, showing why this is the minimum perimeter. So even mathematically, you have to be able to explain the reason for why your answer should be correct. So a lot of different subjects are moving towards this. And if your student goes to university, they'll be asked to critically think even more. Now that was about the HSC, but I'm sure more of you are interested in selective schools. So let's have a little bit of a talk about that. The Department of Education has provided a document online for everybody to view, and it is called the Review of Selective Education Access. This was presented in 2018, and it is the reason why they are changing the selective school test for next year. In particular, we need to look at Action 5, Action 6, and Action 7. So Action 5 says that they aim to align the difficulty of the test to the ability levels of the gifted students sitting them. Now, in normal words, that means that they are going to make the test more difficult because they found that it wasn't a very good test for the higher achieving students because they could answer the easy questions very easily. So the point of the exam is to choose the best of the best. So they're going to now make it more catered towards high achieving students. Action 6 says to update the frameworks used to guide test design and incorporate state-of-the-art assessment strategies. Now, what that means is that they are going to change the format of the exams. So they are going to still do a paper exam next year for 2022's cohort, but in 2022, they are going to trial doing the test online. What that means is they are going to have some fancy technology to kind of tailor the exam to the student who is sitting it. So for example, if I'm a very high achieving student, they will keep giving me harder questions to try and see how smart I am. If I don't do so well in the beginning, they might give me questions that are a little bit less advanced, just to kind of differentiate where I am exactly in the average range. So they are thinking of doing those sorts of tests in the future because technology is so amazing now that they can. I am not sure yet if they are going to definitely do this, but in this paper, in this document, they said that that is where they are headed towards. But the most important action, I think, for us right now is action 7, which says ensure mathematical and English ability are correctly weighted. Okay, so we're going to have a closer look at action 7. The review found that the general ability test that was used in the old selective school tests actually gave an advantage to students who were good at mathematics. So it favored maths more than English. Even though general ability is not supposed to be, it's about logic and reasoning in both verbal and mathematical terms. But they found that those who had higher skills in mathematics were able to do general ability a lot easier than English. So as you can see in this diagram, it's weighted towards mathematics. And that also contributed to perhaps more boys being able to succeed in the selective school exam than girls, because it is perceived, it is not necessarily true, but in society, people believe that maths is for boys and English is for girls. So then they tend to focus more on that or the other. And then there's a slight advantage. So in most years, there has been like about a 5% gap between the boys and the girls, and the boys being 5% more than the girls being selected into selective schools. So they want to stop this. What that means, in my opinion, is that the thinking skills test, the new part of the selective school exam, is going to focus a lot more on verbal reasoning rather than mathematical reasoning. That is my prediction. Obviously, the department has not yet given out any sample papers for the new selective school test. I believe they will be giving that out towards the end of this year or perhaps early next year. And when that happens, I'm sure many tutoring centres will get onto it and start asking you to go to their tutoring centres and studying for the thinking skills test. But until then, we actually don't know what the format is or what it looks like, and nobody knows until they publish it. All right, the next question is critical thinking taught in schools? Okay, is it part of the curriculum, and is it a subject in all schools? So as I said earlier, critical thinking has been incorporated into the syllabus. If we look at the Australian curriculum, it is clearly stated as a general capability right over here. However, it is not a subject. Okay, it's not like mathematics or English or science or chemistry, Japanese. It is a skill that has to be embedded into all of those subjects. Okay, so I'm going to show you a very quick video from ACARA, which is the organization that makes the Australian curriculum. And it will just explain to you a little bit more about general capabilities and critical thinking.
The three-dimensional structure of the Australian curriculum enables an integrated approach to teaching and learning. The general capabilities are one dimension of the Australian curriculum. 7 general capabilities are identified in the Australian curriculum: critical and creative thinking, ethical understanding, information and communication technology capability, intercultural understanding, personal and social capability, literacy, numeracy. Critical and creative thinking is about the ability to collect and analyse relevant information in order to understand and solve problems. Students learn to evaluate multiple perspectives and to argue a position articulately and effectively using complex reasoning. For example, students in a Year 4 science class learn to explain their ideas and offer reasons to justify their design of a simple machine based on their understanding of contact and non-contact forces. Developing skills in critical and creative thinking enables students to identify key ideas, analyse information, break issues into their component parts, reflect on their learning, and propose new solutions to complicated problems in any learning area.
Okay, so critical and creative thinking is a key component of education in Australia. However, in New South Wales, we don't actually follow the Australian curriculum as it is. In saying that though, the general capabilities are still integrated into each key learning area in the New South Wales syllabus documents as well. So it is still important. We don't follow the Australian curriculum, word for word, but we incorporate a lot of what the Australian curriculum says, and the New South Wales syllabus uses the Australian curriculum to make their own document. Also, this means that we can use the resources given by ACARA to plan for a child's growth in critical and creative thinking. There is a document online called the Creative and Critical Thinking Learning Continuum. You can download it online very easily if you search that up. And maybe we can give the link in WeChat later as well if you are interested. But here is just one of the pages from that document. If I were to teach critical thinking to my students, I would definitely be looking at this table because it tells you where the students should be depending on the year that they're in. So level 1 is for example, kindergarten and year 1 students. Level 2 is up until year 2, and then level 3 is up to year 4, and level 4 is up to year 6. Okay. So let's have a look at, for example, the last one, evaluate procedures and outcomes. That means that a kindergarten or year 1 student should be able to check whether they are satisfied with the outcome of tasks or actions. And that's it. That should be enough to say they can critically think for that age. And then level 2 is for year 2 students. They can now start to evaluate whether they have accomplished what they set out to achieve. So goal setting, and then reflecting on their goals. That could be a test to see whether they can think critically at that age. For year 3 or year 4 students, they should be able to explain and justify ideas and outcomes. And then year 5 and 6 should be able to evaluate the effectiveness of ideas, products, performances, methods, and courses of action against given criteria. I said earlier that with evaluation, you need to evaluate against some kind of standard or some kind of criteria. So they will probably have learned about the criteria, and then they have to evaluate on top of that. This also has year 7, 8, 9, and 10, because the Australian curriculum is from K or foundation to 10. So that's why they have the whole continuum here. I think this is a very useful document, not just for teachers, but for parents as well. If you do some little activities with your children at home, you can definitely use this table to help you decide whether they are at the level that they should be or not. As I said before, New South Wales does not use the Australian curriculum as a whole document. It has elements of it, which means that some teachers will be better at doing critical thinking than others. For example, I know many history teachers, they might use critical thinking a lot more because their subject requires it. In maths, they are constantly thinking about problems and solving it. So to them, that is enough, but they don't necessarily go and teach you how to think mathematically and to problem solve. They just kind of help you get the answers for the maths papers. So teachers are also at different levels of being able to teach about critical thinking. And I do think that the parent has a lot more responsibility in coaching critical and creative thinking from a younger age. So definitely, if you want to do something at home, use this document to help you. In saying that, let's have a look at how you can help your child to become a critical thinker. So do you have the responsibility, and will your child pick it up naturally? So I already said, yes, I do think parents have an important role to play because you do spend more time, or hopefully you do, spend more time with your child than the teacher does. And yes, your child will eventually pick it up, but people learn at different paces. And if you leave it to nature or how they, like their personality, they might not develop it until a very late stage. I myself personally really liked memorizing and doing tests that required me to remember information. And I hated doing higher order thinking questions when I was younger. Obviously, I didn't know there were higher order thinking questions at the time. I'm just looking back now and reflecting on myself and going, I hated doing those questions because they were difficult, they were longer, they were not clear enough because it could be open to my opinion all the time. So I didn't really like those kinds of questions. And then when I got to university, that's when I realized, oh, I actually think that that kind of questioning is more important and more useful in life. I mean, I don't remember much about, for example, math formulas. I might remember the formula, but not really understand why I used it. So you can see that it's more important to understand the reason behind something rather than just memorizing one piece of information or a fact. So I'll give you some advice now, just some advice. This is not all the advice in the world, it's just a little bit to help you perhaps develop critical thinking in your child. So the first one is to encourage play. What this means is to allow them to experience different things in life from a young age. You should be able to give them indoor and outdoor experiences and practical hands-on tasks so that they can learn by trial and error, making mistakes, but in a safe environment, of course. While they do this on their own, they will experience cause and effect. So for example, if they do something and then later they find out the reaction or the consequence of it, then that is critical thinking, okay? And it will also help them to think abstractly when they are older. The next one is to enhance reading comprehension. I cannot stress enough the importance of literacy as well if you want your child to become a critical thinker. So they need to be exposed to a variety of texts, and you should also include newspapers or articles in their reading. So some non-fiction things and some kind of like a media type articles will be good, because then you can ask them, do you think that, you know, the writer of this article is trying to get you to buy something? How are they doing that? You know, those sorts of conversations are quite useful for a critical thinker. And it's also a way to test, not you test them, but they can test themselves on what they know versus what they don't already know. When you're reading a book and you come across some new vocabulary, you can understand the gist, but you don't understand all of it. So the child will then go, oh, I know I need to go and learn more about it. So reading has that effect. Another thing is to ask questions and also to encourage the child to ask questions. So both the parent and the child need to learn how to ask questions and how to ask good questions. This will help lead the child to hypothesize, or what that means is to ask if all the time. Okay, what if? So if they can ask that kind of question, they can then come up with a solution. And then they can also demonstrate what they have mastered by asking questions. The last one is a bit of a fun one to do with your child. You can give them some riddles or brain teasers and work on them together. It will help the child to analyze information. The important thing here is though, to not rush them. You need to pause and you need to wait for the child to think, because critical thinking, in some books, it is called slow thinking. So it's more about the quality of thinking rather than thinking quickly. Of course, the slow thinking will become faster and faster through practice. Okay, so I've done a lot of talking. Now I'm going to get you to be a little bit more involved. So if you can now get out your devices and perhaps get your child to come sit with you as well, we can do some exercises together. So this one is for the kindergarten and year 2 students. I recommend for this age group to focus on spatial reasoning and the skill of comparing. So we'll do like very, very simple basic activities to develop these skills. So on your device, go to www.menti.com, and then it will ask you for a number or a code. And so please type in 8464055 to join the activity. Now, if you are not for kindergarten or year 2, you are more than welcome to join anyway, but I do have different activities for year 3 to 4 and for years 5 to 6. Okay, so I'll give a moment for everybody to get onto that, and I will also change my screen so that you can all see the results. And I will go to here. Okay, so when you join, can you please click the thumbs up, because then I can see how many people have joined, and when there are enough people, then we can begin. I can see Shan has raised their hand. I actually cannot go and see the screen right now, so hopefully one of the admin people can help you. Okay, so we will begin now, and if you are joining in late, you can still use the code, because that code will be visible at the top there, okay? So, ooh, there's a lot of people. Let's begin. So the first question is very simple, very basic, but try and get your child to do this and not help them, okay? So you need to ask them to choose the image that fits. Okay, so as you can see, not too difficult, but that is an example of spatial reasoning. So being able to figure out the details of an image and deciding which one should fit. Okay, we're going to do a similar activity now, but it's slightly more difficult, just very slightly. I love animals, so I've got a lot of animals in these activities. We got some very fast. Kindy, year 1, year 2. 5 seconds. And time's up. Oh, this one, as you can see, is a little bit more difficult. So you should always try to ask your child, why did they choose the one that they chose? And then see if they can figure out the reasons themselves as to why they got it correct or wrong. So this one, there were some images that looked very similar, but then perhaps the child forgot to look at the actual shape of the puzzle. All right, so there's a lot of there's more information in this question. Even though it looks very similar to the first one, it's actually 1 step or 2 steps higher than the previous question. Okay, next question. Choose the item that goes best with the picture. Now, if your child has already answered the question on the device, perhaps ask them verbally and get them to justify why they chose that picture. Okay, very good. So hopefully they chose the paintbrush because they could see that the man looked like he was wearing overalls, which is what painters stereotypically wear. Also, the paintbrush has the color red on it and the bucket has red in it. So if they can justify the reasons for why they chose their answer, then that is critical thinking. Okay, this one's a little bit different. You need to choose 3 items which are most similar and give reasons why. So here, you have to type in your answer, but in your answer, I want you to also write why you chose. Okay, so people will have different ideas. And then we're going to see some sample responses when people have finished. Okay, so this one might take a little longer because you actually have to type a few words. I really hope that some of these answers are different and that not everybody chose the same ones. But I think it'll be very interesting to see. Okay, so I'm going to have a look at the answers now. If you still want to submit something, you can. Okay, so somebody chose the bread, the sandwich, and the burger because they all have bread in them. Excellent. Sandwich, burgers, and hot dogs because they're all fast food and also made with bread. Orange, apple, and watermelon because they are all fruits. Very good. Orange, pizza, and watermelon because they are all circles. Excellent. A lot of people chose the fruit one. A lot of people looked at the shape because it's round. And a lot of people looked at the actual components, which is bread. Okay. Salad, hamburger, and sandwich, they all have green lettuce. That's different. Very good, very creative, but still logical. Okay, so if you were in a classroom and asked this question to the students, then you could get them to work in groups as well and do a little bit of light arguing and persuading, or they're just sharing their information, their ideas with each other as well. Okay, so that is the end of the activity for kindergarten and up to year 2. So now I'm going to do year 3 and year 4, I think it is. So there is a different code for that. Let me just share screen again. Oops. Okay, so for years 3 and 4, we're going to focus on logical reasoning and creativity. So again, go to menti.com, but this time, please put 6271513 into the code box. Okay, and again, I will give you that code on my other screen. Where is it? Just give me a second. And again, please press the like button or the thumbs up just so that I know how many people have been able to join. Six, 2, 7, 1, 5, 1, 3. Okay, so I'm quite conscious of time, so we will start. If you are still trying to join, the code will still be available for you to look at the top. Okay, so question 1 is a category activity. The question is on your device. It says, enter up to 5 household items. Try to choose objects that other people won't say. Okay, so this is the skill of categorizing, but also to try and think a little bit differently to others. And the aim is to try and get a word that nobody else has said. I'm playing this as well, so and if your child does not understand household items, just tell them to think about what is in a house usually. What do most families have in their homes? Okay, if you are still answering, that's okay, keep going. But what I'm going to do now is show you the results. So the bigger the word, the more people who said it. Okay, so if your word is not a big word, then you've probably chosen a word that other people haven't chosen, which is very good. Okay, so I will stop rating now, so it's not going to change anymore. So a lot of people chose table, a lot of people chose toilet paper, kettle, toilet lamp, chair and couch and stove. So all the ones that were in the picture, right? So you had to try and think of other things. Let's have a look at some smaller ones. Cushion, very good. Stickers. Do all houses have stickers? Saucepan, good. My family. A mug, excellent. Cabinets, basin with the tap, that's very specific. Coffee table, okay, so you can see that the ones that are smaller seem to have more detail. A knife holder, a recliner, very good. A desk, a piano, photo, microphone. You have a microphone in your house? Okay. Telephone, teapot, excellent. Wi-Fi router, excellent. Okay, so this is not the end of the activity usually, so there will be justifications as well. So always asking the question, why? Why did you choose this one? What makes it so difficult for others to guess this one as well? And you can also ask students to categorize them even further. Okay, so we've categorized this as household items, but then after that, can you categorize them even more? For example, you can put toilet and toilet paper together. Why? Because they are both in the bathroom. Okay, and bathtub as well, I can see that. All right, so you can do a lot of activities just around this skill of categorization. All right, next activity. So here is a hypothetical question. All right, so what if gravity reversed for 10 minutes each day? If it reversed for 10 minutes each day, what would happen? This is the creativity side of things, but you need to still be reasonable because gravity is a real thing. So ask your child to write what they think would happen if gravity were reversed for 10 minutes each day. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look now at some of the answers. You would get painfully stretched. It's always fun to read these responses. We will float higher and may grow taller. Really? I hope you can tell me how this would work. You could float to school. Water cannot be drunk, and things cannot be eaten. Or could they? Surely if gravity reversed for 10 minutes each day, somebody like yourselves would be able to come up with a new innovation. Granny won't look as wrinkled as now? Really? So anti-aging? We would fly. The water drop will go up. Well, that's in the picture. You would bash your head on things. When we jump up, we would stay up for a while because with gravity, we would stay on the ground, and when we jump, we would go back down. Very logical explanation. I think we would fly upside down or jump around because there is not much gravity to hold us on the earth for 10 minutes. Everything will float for 10 minutes each day. We would all float. So a lot of the same answers. You will fly away for 10 minutes. It would be chaos. Okay, so now we're getting a little bit deeper and thinking of, how lucky it is that we do have gravity so that we can stay on the ground and things won't be hitting us all the time. Yeah, lots of flying and floating. We'll all fall from the sky. Ah, yeah, I didn't think of this one at all. So we would end up floating, and then when it goes back to having gravity, we would all fall down. Ah, very smart. Children will be more interested in gravity. That is true. Okay. So this is just an example of the types of activities that even you could do yourself with your child to promote logical and creative thinking. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing the screen and I'm going to get the Year 5 and Year 6 students to do their activities. And so you get to see my face again. Share screen. For Year 5 and 6, please go to 810620, and we're going to focus on evaluating and justifying opinions. Okay, so I'm just going to change my screen now, but you will still be able to see the code later. Not this one, this one. Okay, let's begin. Don't forget, you can still join by putting in the code, even if you're a little bit late. Okay, so by the time a child is 5 years old, they know about 2,500 words, fact or opinion. So you have two options. Is it a fact or is this an opinion? It should be fairly simple. Hopefully everybody gets this right. Ooh, not so easy. Okay, so 30 of you thought it was a fact, 33 of you thought it was an opinion. This is more fact than it is opinion because there is no feeling or anything attached to it. Okay, whether the fact is correct or not, maybe that's why some people are not sure. Okay, next question. Sixth grade is more fun than fifth grade. Is this a fact or opinion? Okay, and time's up. Let's have a look. More people realize this is an opinion. That is correct. Okay, because there is a little bit of emotion involved. All right, next question. My nose is too long. Fact or opinion? Opinion, very good. Now I'm hoping that the 14 people who chose facts were thinking perhaps, for that animal, it is too long to do some things. But obviously, it is still some kind of opinion involved there. So we can't say it as a fact for sure. Perhaps they think that a long nose is necessary for their survival. Okay. All right, this is a different question now. So you need to evaluate whether these pairs of words are closely related or not related at all. Okay, so I'm not able to do this actually like properly with all of you, but to your parents, the children should be justifying their answer. So they can choose, a kitten and a baby, they have nothing in common, but then you have to say why. All right. So I'll show the image and then we'll do the results later when more people have done it. $81. Okay, so what this type of activity is trying to do is to get the students to be more evaluative. So a lot of the time with evaluation, there will be, like likely, highly likely, unlikely. They have to have like a scale. Okay, so let's have a look at the results so far. Oh, a lot of people are choosing the middle. Okay, so hopefully you're giving good justifications. Oh, people can't see a similarity between 3 and 7. Kitten and baby, they're both babies of some kind of mammal. Magazines and radio, they both give news. 3 and 7 are both odd numbers, perhaps. Lion and elephant are both mammals, are both strong mammals. Spring and birth, birth of an animal or a child, but spring is like the birth of flowers, perhaps, and trees. Okay, so there's all these different ways to evaluate. But you can see where the child will evaluate them based on a rating scale like this. Okay. I have one more example for you, but this one is very, very difficult. This is actually a question from a university critical thinking test. So see how you go. So this kind of question is something that perhaps might be asked in the new selective schools test. Probably not as difficult as this one, but somewhere along these lines of being able to draw conclusions or make judgments. If you can get this one correct, I'd be very impressed. Okay, so let's have a look at the answers. Okay, I will now show you the correct answer is B. So if you chose B, well done. Very, very good. About half of you chose B. Okay, so half of you have a very good chance of getting into university. Okay, so that is the end of the year 5 to 6 activity time. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing this one and go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so I am aware that we have already reached past 8 o'clock. So do we have time to answer a few questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I have received a few questions from people. Here are some of these questions. I'll just put them all there now. So, are there any recommended books to help my child? If I'm perfectly honest, there are not that many books at the moment. A lot of the books are for teachers. So, like how to teach critical thinking. Not a lot of books are specifically for students. However, there is one series of books that I have found, and I will show you very briefly where you can buy it from. You can buy it online. So, new share. I'm just going to share my screen again. Please bear with me. So not this one, but okay. So on Book Depository, there is a series of books here called Skill Sharpeners Critical Thinking. This one is grade 1, but they have grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for critical thinking, and the reviews are very, very good. The activities are enjoyable for that age group as well. So if there is a book to start with, I think you could perhaps purchase these. And at the moment, there's Black Friday sales, so perhaps you might want to buy some tonight. Okay, so now I'll go back to the other questions. So skill sharpeners, critical thinking. We will post this on WeChat later in case you don't get it now. Okay, let me go back to my thing. Okay. So the next question was, what's the difference between critical thinking and general ability? Well, hopefully I already answered that question throughout my presentation. General ability is about logical reasoning. So there is some overlap, but critical thinking is more about the justification of your critical thinking, of your thinking skills. So general ability is more about the answer, but critical thinking will have a stronger focus on the reasons behind your answer. So they are very closely linked, but the focus is on different areas. Can critical thinking skills help my child with reading comprehension and writing skills? Definitely reading comprehension, yes. Writing skills, a tiny bit, but like I said before, I do think that literacy and writing skills are separate and very, very important as well. They go together, but critical thinking does not necessarily mean they will write well. But critical thinking does sort of mean that they can read and understand better. Because if they need to do reading in order to develop their critical thinking skills, and they also need to think critically when they read. So they go together very well. Definitely at a young age, I highly recommend that kids read a whole range of books. Picture books as well are getting more educational. So for the really young students out there, kindergarten to year 2, I would suggest getting a lot of picture books that have a focus on, mental well-being or critical thinking. Like there's a lot of educational picture books out there these days as well. And they're all easily accessible by purchasing them online. What kind of questions will appear in the new selective school test? Unfortunately, I have not got an answer for you there. I'm assuming that this question is about the thinking skills test, not the English and the math tests. Those will be fairly similar, although mathematical reasoning might now include some of the old general ability, mathematical general ability questions. But thinking skills will be a completely new format. I do think there'll be less questions in thinking skills. If there are less questions, that means that the questions require more thought and deeper thought. So I am going to assume that it's going to be very similar to that last question that I showed you in the year 5 to 6 sample activities. And there are many critical thinking courses in the market. How do I choose? again, that is very hard to answer if I don't see what the courses are from different agencies. I do think there's a variety of different methods of teaching critical thinking. I think the best ones would be not just worksheets. Okay, so if the tutoring agency is just giving worksheets and that's it, like just doing a lot of logical puzzles, that's a good start, but it is not true critical thinking. True critical thinking is about inquiry. So focusing on a topic and then really going deeper into that topic and then creating a solution for the questions within that topic. I think that is true critical thinking, and it can be done from a young age. So if you can find a course like that, that would be more useful for much later in life. But if you are happy with just, developing spatial reasoning, logical, like sequencing activities, or doing some multiple choice questions, then any of the agencies would be sufficient, in my opinion. I also have some more questions from WeChat. So Grace asks, what kind of class can help train kids in critical thinking, like chess or instruments? Yes, chess definitely is about strategy and it's about forward thinking. I do highly recommend chess, and there are many places that teach chess from a young age as well. And I am also thinking of asking a friend to join Australian Elite Education. And this friend of mine used to be, or is, like a chess sort of like grandmaster and trains children all the time in chess. So I do think that is something that you can get your child to do. But remember what I said, is it doesn't really matter what kind of experience you give your child. It is about letting them experience as much as possible. So whatever they are interested in, try to let them at least try it out for a couple of lessons. So if they want to learn an instrument, get them to a teacher and start practicing, or maybe do a small class first so they can sample it. Chess as well, or puzzles, calligraphy, drawing, anything to get them into the world. Okay, don't forget to do outdoor things too. So get them swimming, get them going on orienteering, which is like camping and learning to navigate by themselves. Get them to do as much as possible while they're young so that they experience everything. And then they will develop critical thinking a lot faster. Okay, and last question from Linda says, for a Year 5 student, what is the best way to prepare for the selective school test? Like I said, we don't have the format of the new test. We only can base it off the previous exams. Practice papers are probably the fastest way. So if they haven't been doing much training before, then practice papers from the books that you can get, or some tutoring agencies, they do like just exam practice. So they don't teach you how to do the questions, but they get you thinking, get you to do the test in exam conditions. I think that will be very useful for last minute preparation for the selective school test. The selective school test is in March next year, so you don't have a lot of time left. The reason why I say this is because even the review of the selective school test, the people, they said that the students who tend to do better are those who have had previous exposure to the format of the test. And not necessarily do they need training or tutoring in maths and English, but they needed to see the types of questions beforehand, and that helped them more than actually being tutored in English and maths. Does that make sense? So the fact that they were exposed to the length of the exam or the way the questions are presented on the paper, that was more important than actually being tutored in English and maths ability. So that's very, very interesting. That is also the reason why for HSC students at school, they are not allowed to do HSC style exams more than once in a year, because they don't want students to practice for the exam. They want students to be skillful in that subject area, not be good at sitting exams. But, there's nothing stopping you from giving more exam practice to your child now that it's so close to the selective school exam. So I would say that is probably the best way for now. Okay, so that is it from me. Thank you everyone for watching this webinar. I'm sorry that it went over time, but I hope that it was very useful for you. Please encourage your children to become the future critical thinkers of society. It will be very beneficial for them, I'm sure. Thank you, Australian Elite Education, for giving me this opportunity to present, and I now hand it back to you.